Does Chris Paul belong in the Suns' Ring of Honor? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
Should I go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Saul,
Whoever
because I
wants
think
to go
Gerald and I are
first.
actually going to fight. So
We might have to.
So I've gone back and forth on this for
Okay.
like 5 seconds. And
5 seconds.
and I do believe Chris Paul should be in the Ring of Honor. Listen, I think for what he did for this franchise to pull it out from the depths, I know it improved the year before he got there, but like I said, it takes somebody to take what you've built already and take it to a whole nother level. And Chris Paul was able to do that. And it's not even just about achievement on the court. I think it's more of his influence with specific players, and namely Devin Booker. I don't know if Devin Booker is at the level he's at without Chris Paul's influence and leadership in the last 3 seasons. He was vital to this franchise to show them the winning ways again after they had lost it for a decade. And I just don't think you can overlook what he meant in that moment. And I know I've been kind of hard on Chris Paul from time to time. I just felt like last season was kind of a wash for the most part, and that I was questioning what kind of value he could have possibly brought. But CP definitely deserves all the flowers for getting us to the finals, for getting us to our best record in franchise history, and for helping guide our young superstar to a whole nother level, which I think we're gonna enjoy the fruits of for the next decade.
Look, because a lot of people, I've been pretty staunchly in favor of Chris Paul being in the Ring of Honor. I've been saying this on Twitter for a while now, and I've gotten a lot of pushback on that because he was only here for 3 seasons. Charles Barkley was only here for 4, and Charles Barkley is the only player in Suns franchise history that had more of an impact in a short amount of time as Chris Paul. This is a 2-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA selection, 1-time NBA assist leader, a Western Conference champ, took you to your 3rd NBA Finals. You'd only been there twice before in your entire history. He's 2nd in assists per game in franchise history. And everybody, talks about, he didn't put up, Hall of Fame, Ring of Honor numbers here. He averaged 15, 9, and 4. Steve Nash, in his son's tenure, averaged 14, 9, and 3. So, I know that Nash was a more efficient shooter, and he was here for longer, obviously. But this isn't about longevity. We're the only NBA franchise that does this, that has a Ring of Honor. And the whole point of that is to celebrate players that were impactful and had meaning to the franchise. How are you going to argue that Chris Paul did not do that when you went from a 38-win pace season the year before he arrived to a 58-win pace season that next year when you went to the finals with him, when you had your best season in franchise history with him at the helm? I understand Devin Booker is the face of the franchise. He's the best player here. But Chris Paul in just 3 seasons here had as many All-NBA selections as Tom Chambers, as many as Walter Davis, both of whom are in the Ring of Honor. He had more All-NBA selections than Connie Hawkins, Dan Marley, and Dick Van Arsdale, all in the Ring of Honor. So, the only case against him is that he wasn't here for long enough, but that shouldn't diminish the impact that he had during his time here. Mm-hmm. And if you're talking about players that came in and had an impact, there are very few that had more of an impact than Chris Paul. If you want to argue he needs to wait until Sean Murray and Amari Stoudemire, some of these other guys get in, I totally understand that. That's totally fine. But the question is whether he deserves the Ring of Honor, not whether he should be in next. And I feel like if you're looking at the history of most influential Suns players, he's got to be in the top 10.
Well, I knew Gerald was going to go that way, and I had no interest. 0 interest in trying to debate this because I knew he was going to come hard with the facts.
Well,
and goddamn, he did.
Guess what? There's facts that he left out to make his argument more convenient.
Oh, here we go.
Because I spent well over an hour researching this day, going through each player in the Ring of Honor. Mm-hmm. And let's lay out the case. Chris Paul, 3 seasons with the Suns. That would be the shortest tenure of anybody to make it into the Suns Ring of Honor. Only a 2-time All-Star, did make the 1 finals appearance. Can't deny that. third highest in assists per game with the Suns. But guess what? The guy that's number 1 in that stat, Jason Kidd, who was here for longer, isn't in the Ring of Honor there. 7th highest in steals per game. But Ron Lee, Don Busey, and Charlie Scott all are higher than him on the list, which shows you how unimportant that stat tends to be there.
So
9th
why'd you
highest player efficiency rating. Guess who's ahead of him? DeAndre Ayton. Okay, when you look at this, number 2 in assist percentage. But Elliot Perry, Eric Bledsoe, Tyler Ulis, and Jay Humphries are all in the top 10 there. And he's number 1 in offensive efficiency rating. I'll give him credit there. But look, the problem here is a Ring of Honor is about impact, where you rank in franchise history, and what you've done. You threw out Connie Hawkins and kind of dismissed him. 4 seasons, 4-time All-Star. Also, the first superstar in franchise history that helped put basketball on the map here in Phoenix. I think that's a more important impact than CP3 had here. You bring up KJ, 3-time All-Star, number 2 all-time in assists, number 3 in points, number 2 in total assists, number 4 in steals, number 1 in free throws. He had a bigger impact on the franchise in that way. Oh, and came out of retirement to save their ass when all their point guards were injured and they were going to a playoff series with the San Antonio Spurs. Steve Nash, you want to compare their stats, but Steve Nash played 10 seasons here, is the all-time leader in assists, won 2 MVPs, and had 6 All-Star appearances as a Phoenix Sun.
How many finals appearances?
Doesn't matter. He changed the game of basketball here in Phoenix and across the NBA in his time in Phoenix. So don't tell me that Chris Paul is just as important or more important than Steve Nash to Phoenix, or that they're on equal footing just because their statistical averages are close there.
Let me cut you off, because you're bringing up a lot of arguments that I did not make, and you're bringing up stats that you're building up to knock down. Like, you brought up steals per game. Where in my thing did I mention that steals per game was a relevant argument for Chris Paul being in the Ring of Honor?
No, you had no.
You brought
your
up player
arguments
efficiency.
were all ethereal. They weren't. He made the finals. They had a big turnaround. He didn't even have the biggest turnaround. Tom Chambers.
I didn't say he did. I said you went from 38 pace wins to 58.
Yeah,
that's a pretty
Tom
big
Chambers
jump.
had a bigger hop in his first season here in Phoenix.
Chambers was not the driving force behind
Yes,
that
he
team
was.
that Chris Paul was in the same way.
In
On a finals team? On a team that went to the finals? No.
Tom Chambers was
It's
the
not the same
driving
thing.
force of the 1988 Phoenix
Did they go
Suns.
to the finals?
They went to the
It's not
Western
the same
Conference
thing.
Finals, I believe, and ran into the Lakers.
You brought up player efficiency rating, which is a trash stat. You brought up all these different stats.
Hold on. Gerald, Mr. Advanced Analytics, is now trashing advanced stats to try to make Chris Paul in the Ring of Honor.
PER is a dumb stat. The people that know advanced analytics know that PER is a stupid stat.
Let's make this very clear. Chris Paul is Charlie Scott for the Phoenix Suns franchise.
Absolutely
not.
That is ridiculous.
Is that an insult to
Now
Chris
you're
Paul?
just being
Charlie
a troll.
Scott, here for 4 years, 3-time All-Star, future Hall of Famer, number 1 in points per game in Suns history, number 7 in minutes per game, and number 5 in steals per game in Suns history. There's not enough longevity for Chris Paul with this franchise, not enough impact statistically, not enough awards won, and he made it to the finals. Great. Devin Booker was a big part of that too. It's not as if Chris Paul single-handedly carried this team to the NBA Finals. Charles Barkley had a bigger impact when he came here as well. Like, look, Chris Paul's impact on this franchise changed things culturally, and I don't deny that. But he's not Ring of Honor worthy. His numbers shouldn't be retired. He did not have enough of an impact on this franchise and the long-term standing of this franchise. Then, honestly, Matt Ishbia deserves to be in there faster than Chris Paul.
You're being ridiculous.
My God.
You're being a troll on purpose.
My God.
You know you are.
No.
Look, that is absurd. You compared Chris Paul to Charlie Scott. That is absurd. You're
In
bringing
his
up.
time
You're
in
bringing
Phoenix,
up
not his
stats.
career.
You're bringing up things that nobody here is arguing with. Like, you're saying that Nash had more of an impact. Of course he did. He was here for longer. He won MVPs. He was.
But
the
your
all-time
argument was
great
they
players.
have the same kind of stat line.
My argument was for the people that are arguing that Chris Paul didn't put up good enough numbers while he was here. His numbers compare pretty well to Steve Nash, who is the same guy that they're arguing is the greatest son of all time. That's my point. My point is not to diminish, like you said, I diminished Connie Hawkins. No, I didn't. I just said that Chris Paul has more All-NBA selections during his time here than Connie Hawkins did. My point is all of these people, 5 of whom I named that are already in the Ring of Honor, Chris Paul had more All-NBA selections than them, or just as many in 3 years. The point is that Chris Paul had that much of an impact and was that good during his time here that his only spending 3 seasons here is not enough of a reason to leave him out.
So your whole point, okay, the biggest point you're making about Chris Paul being in the Ring of Honor is that they went to the finals, basically, and his All-NBA appearances.
No, it's that they went to the finals, that they won 20 more games, that they had their best season in franchise history with him as an All-NBA player, that, like, in terms of the most influential Suns who came here and helped turn things around after fucking 10 years out of the playoffs, which was their longest playoff drought in franchise history, he helped get them back to the finals. Like, that's absurd if we're going to try to diminish that after the fact just because last year he was a shell of that same player.
I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm saying, no, I appreciate him helping them get to the finals. I appreciate him coming in here and restoring some of the shine that's on the Phoenix Suns franchise. But those two things are not enough to put him up there with the greatest ever to do it in the franchise.
Why not?
That's what the Ring of Honor is about. I'm not giving him credit for the previous.
To decide what exactly the Ring of Honor is about. For me, the Ring of Honor would be impact, or in multiple ways, it could be like Al McCoy did not impact this franchise from a basketball perspective, but from a community perspective. I'm just saying impact within the Suns organization is what I look at the Ring of Honor as. And Chris Paul had a huge impact.
The
on
only
this
guy in the Ring of Honor that I would argue had less of an impact than Chris Paul, that shouldn't be there if you're going to make that argument, is Tom Chambers. That's the one guy I look on there and go, Chris Paul maybe would deserve a spot if we're arguing.
But Chris
Tom
Paul
Chambers
will forever go down as one of the greatest point guards in franchise history.
No, he won't.
Yes,
he was.
What?
No, go look at. Okay, so 2 good years. I would.
They
put
were
up,
so good.
They were 2 of the greatest years in
they
franchise
were
history.
not 2 of the greatest years.
Yes, they were. They went to the fucking finals and they won 64 games.
That's not him as a point guard.
Espo.
This is an individual honor.
Espo, you
It's
literally
part of their
said
contributions.
you literally said that Chris Paul is quite possibly the best point guard to ever play for this franchise.
No, he's the best point guard as in totality. Right? Not in the 3 years I'm looking at him on this franchise. Too often injured, came primarily in the playoffs where it hurt them. If you look at it statistically, very good. But we're talking about a franchise that had Jason Kidd, had freaking Gail Goodrich originally, had KJ, who was very, very good at point guard. You want to talk about
accomplished nothing as a Sun.
His stats were great too. We're talking about an individual honor, right? In part. Okay, so more All-Star appearances, all these things. Like he's very short. He had 2 All-Star appearances in 3 years.
2 All-NBAs. You're just going to dismiss the more important one?
2 All-NBAs. It was too short of a runway for him to be in the Ring of Honor. I will stand by that till the day I die, and that is just the way it is. 3 years here and 2 years that were really good. One that we all questioned if he was even capable of doing it anymore is not enough to get you in the Ring of Honor.
Oof, man.
All right, I'm going to put a little pause on this conversation. And we did get a super chat from Psycho Blue. Thank you. Said Scott to CP3 is because we traded Scott for Westfall and we traded CP3 for Beal. Thank you, Psycho Blue, for your super chat. I don't think we're ever going to get to an agreement here.
No, I don't think that was ever the point.
I didn't think it was going to be this heated, to be completely honest with you.
What do you think?
I'm so sick. I'm so sick of now that Chris Paul is gone, and because he had a down year, everybody comes out of the woodworks every time someone leaves the Suns about how, they actually weren't that good, and we're better off without them, and we didn't need them. And this shit, and it happens with Chris Paul a lot because he gets blamed for what DA's role has been. He gets blamed for bogging down the offense. He gets blamed for all this stuff. And I agree with it to a certain extent in terms of the offense will be different this year and it'll be faster. And we saw that in the playoffs to a certain degree.
Hold on.
But this rewriting of history, like he wasn't a part of two of the best seasons in franchise history, is insane to me. And I feel like that is something that's worth being remembered, especially if we're the only franchise that does this. And the whole point is to honor players that made meaningful contributions to this franchise.
We're not
And
the
you're
only
not-
franchise that
But
does
here's
it.
the thing.
LA
franchise.
has it.
No,
they
Boston
don't.
has it.
Listen.
Yeah,
No,
they
they
do.
don't.
They retire their jerseys.
That's not
which
the
is,
same
it's
thing.
It's the
That's
same
not the
thing.
Ring of
It's
Honor.
not the
I
same thing.
disagree.
It's
It's
not
the same
It's not
thing.
the same thing.
Because I don't think that
Chick
Chris
Hearn's
Paul's
in
jersey should be
LA's.
retired. I think it's totally different to retire a
Look-
jersey than the Ring of Honor that the Suns have. Because we did look it up ahead of the show because Gerald had mentioned that
Yeah.
as far as he is aware, the Suns are the only NBA team that has a, quote, Ring of Honor.
Fine, if we're going to
And I
parse
think
things
that
way.
in that sense is why I think the criteria to be inducted into a Ring of Honor is different than like the Hall of Fame or a jersey retirement. Those type of things I feel like are higher up on the totem pole than a quote unquote Ring of Honor like what we have. And this Ring of Honor, again, going back to the initial conversation, is about impact that that person had on the franchise. And I don't think that you can define impact over a number of years. Impact can be substantial regardless if it was a one-day thing or a 10-year span,
Look, Gerald,
in my opinion.
I am in no way trying to claim that Chris Paul had no impact and that he shouldn't be thanked for. I mean, I
know you're
even
not.
made that very clear that he deserves our appreciation for what he did. My point is it a big enough impact over a long enough time? And for me, it's not. But that's not diminishing the fact that he came here and he was part of that finals run. He was part of that 64-win team. I'm not trying to erase what he did. I want to make that very clear. I'm just talking in this very specific thing, and I hold this in a different frame of mind than you do in the way I approach it, and that's fine that we can have that. I wanted to make it clear
No,
I
I
wasn't
know
trying to be that guy.
I know you're not. I'm merely addressing the fact that I feel like these 2 years are going to fly under the radar, and I feel like people are going to quickly move on because we got Bradley Beal, and there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this Suns team that's coming up. But we don't have KD, we don't have Bradley Beal, we don't have stars that want to come to Phoenix and take discounts to play for this team without Chris Paul first looking at the Suns in the bubble and looking at what Devin Booker has done and Monty and all this other stuff and saying, I want to be here. And he was instrumental. Like, people forget that first season that they were together, people were painting Chris Paul in cartoon pictures as like a parent holding these young kids. And yeah, that was gross and way over the line. But like, there was that real he was the Suns' leading MVP candidate that year. Like, he was legitimately fantastic those first 2 seasons. And I don't know. I don't care that he was only here for 3 years. Like, I don't know how you can come here in 3 years and have more of an impact than he did.
And we obviously have different standards in that way. But if they win a title this year, Chris Paul deserves credit in a way for building it and getting them to a level. You're right, because he's the first guy that said, I'll come play with Devin Booker. It gave legitimacy to that. So I agree on that front. I hold it in a different standard, the level at which I let somebody into that group, the amount of time, what is accomplished on the court from an individual perspective. That's the way I look at it.